Welcome to Film Strip. These podcasts are spoiler-filled as we discuss the plots, characters, and themes of the films in review. All content used or discussed in these podcast episodes is the property of the respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504(c)(2), Title 17.
Welcome to Film Strip. I'm Jay.
I'm Lindsey.
And I'm Mike.
And on this episode, we're reviewing Double Jeopardy, starring Ashley Judd, Tommy Lee Jones, Bruce Greenwood, Annabeth Gish, and Roma Mafia. Directed by Bruce Beresford, released in 1999 on a $70 million budget. Grossed $177 million plus at the box office. So back when they would give $70 million to adult dramas, you know, that's what a different time it was. Mike, first off, welcome back to Film Strip. Again, a frequent guest and a longtime friend of the show. Tell folks about your fine selection of podcasts and all the great stuff you're doing out there on Action for Everyone and the Dana Buckler Show.
Yeah, so the best place to find me now is Action for Everyone. For those who don't know, every week I'm joined by filmmaker Liam O'Donnell and film critic, historian, all-around brilliant human being, Vice Victus. And we it's a loose chat. We don't really cover a single movie. We sort of go through the week in action movie news, and we talk about what new action movies have come out that we've seen. So at the time we're recording our most recent episode, we talked about the Netflix Wu Assassins movie, Fistful of Vengeance, as well as we covered Reacher and Peacemaker. And we just kind of shoot the breeze. It's a lot of fun because since Liam's a filmmaker, we get a lot of sort of inside knowledge, inside baseball stuff. And Vice is just, again, genius and also has the heartiest laugh that you've ever heard from anybody. It feels like a warm blanket.
This is true.
Under that, also, while it's on hiatus, it is coming back at some point, is my other show, Adkins Undisputed, where I'm covering the films of Scott Adkins. And then Dana and we haven't been working too much lately just because we're busy, but I was on his show earlier this year, and I'm sure I'll be back on again at some point. As always, I love Dana and can't sing his praises highly enough. I'm not doing it. I don't know you, Jay, if it's not for Dana, so I obviously cannot sing his praises highly enough.
That's true. Dana is good people and a long time friend of Film Strip and even back to the Art of Slaying days. So, well, Mike, we brought you on for a specific reason for this one because a lot of people do know, based on your Twitter handle, Hibachi Justice, which if they want to know the secret to that, that's buried somewhere in the Dana Buckler archives. But the justice part is the key part because you are a lawyering person in real life. And I have for a long time begged to have you on Film Strip to do a law film of some sort. And I promised you it wouldn't be a Grisham one, though I've run many of them by you. And you came up with this, but then you tweeted out there that this movie, quote, makes you grind your teeth at night. So please explain why you brought Double Jeopardy to the list, because I have a story behind this one.
Well, so we were talking and you wanted to you did mention you kind of wanted one that I could not slam, but sort of pick apart and talk about. And I mentioned that, you know, you mentioned Grisham, and I'd already done a really deep dive on A Time to Kill with Dana, and I just really wasn't looking forward to doing a Grisham again. And so I kind of brought this one up because this one, while it doesn't have nearly as much to kind of attack and pick apart, it so fundamentally misunderstands the entire legal concept under which it takes its name that it's one that just has to be talked about. I really can't believe this movie made it past the script stage, you know, in terms of this. And I'm not going to be super negative on it other than when we kind of talk about the legal stuff in this one. But that's what makes me grind my teeth at night, hearing somebody try and explain Double Jeopardy in this movie. I wake up in a cold sweat. I write in my journal, you know, I'm able to sleep. Still the dreams are coming, you know, there we go.
I appreciate you taking this one for the team here because I knew it would be tough. And I'll join you in that too. You know, we have a lot of fun picking stuff, stripping things apart here on Film Strip, but it's hard to make a movie. We know people that have best of intentions, but sometimes those things go awry, and that's where the fun comes in talking about these things. And well, I have a very specific memory of seeing this, but I'm going to hold that because Lindsey, I want to know your background with Double Jeopardy.
I've never seen it. I saw it for the first time yesterday, which is surprising considering the number of lawyering films my dad had me watch growing up, because he was pretty convinced that that is what I needed to be. He still is one of those parents that's like, I mean, I'm doing well, I'm living my best life, but he's like, I don't know, I still think you would have made a great attorney.
Have you ever played an attorney
like,
in all your acting career? I'm sure you've done it at least sometime.
You know what? One time in 4th grade, I was an attorney to Mr. Butts, the cigarette, and we had a class trial on whether or not Mr. Butts was responsible for emphysema. So there's my story. I lost, but I feel like I lost because of, pandering to the jury. That's a whole other story. As luck had it, it was shorter than some of the other films that we've had recently. So we were able to crank it out last night.
This is true. Well, I've been teasing it for 5 minutes now. I saw this opening weekend in theaters. I was supposed to go on a date, but the girlfriend at the time had broken up with me. And I was so like, well, whatever, damn it. I'm still going to see this because it looks awesome. Because at that point in life, you got to know where I was. Right out of college, heading into grad school. Ashley Judd was at her like apex of becoming a star. And so I was enamored with just anything she did. And then you threw in the guy who I will always refer to as Dennis Wilson from the TV movie, Bruce Greenwood. You also had my, growing up crush, Annabeth Gish from Hiding Out. And you had the other hook that always got me in a theater, always got my eyes on something, and will to this day get it. Legal thriller, murder mystery. I'm always an easy sucker for those. And I love those. It's why I watch Lifetime movies still to this day. Ron and I have even done a few of those through the years and talked about them. I love them. I don't care how trashy they are. I don't care how ridiculous they are. I get lost in this stuff. And I find it fascinating because I'm not a lawyer. I've never played one. I've known a few in my day. And it's always fun to get around like when I say the real ones and ask them questions like, so how does that exactly work? And I'll never forget asking my friend Clay, who is a tax attorney. So I really should have asked him more about the firm, but I asked him about this after it was over. I said, is that how that works? And in one flat tone, he's like, no, not at all. And that's all he said. And I said, well, okay. Either way, it was a decent premise. So that's what got me out to the theaters. A little bit of heartbreak and a crush on Ashley Judd. But I was game because Tommy Lee Jones, too, at that point, I have always liked him. The very first film memory I have is seeing Coal Miner's Daughter from the back of my parents' Ford LTD station wagon on a drive-through theater. And I remember him in that, and I've seen him in so many things since. And anytime Tommy Lee Jones gets cast as the kind of cranky old man, I'm there. And he sort of made a 40-year career out of doing that. I mean, he really did. And this is post Fugitive and U.S. Marshals and all that action and Batman Forever and all that kind of stuff too. And so I was always about, let me go see Tommy Lee Jones, Men in Black. I should mention that one too, because that was actually good. And, I wanted to see this. So I was down. I was game for this when it happened, but it has been years since I revisited this one. I think I owned it on VHS at one time. Luckily, the local library through the Hoopla app, which I would highly recommend, kids, had this one streaming. So I went right to it and got to watch it again. And I had forgotten so much of this movie, but I never bothered to dig through the trivia bin on this one or anything like that. The only thing I'll nugget out of that just blows my mind is that Jodie Foster was in this movie until she got pregnant and moved on to something else. And I was like, that's a very different movie of Jodie Foster's in this freaking movie, y'all. Like, that's wow. How did we get from that to that? Like, I got questions.
Especially because
playing Libby? Is that who
she was going to be Libby.
Playing?
Yeah, she was going to be Libby.
I could see it, but you're right. Different movie. Very different.
Yeah, especially because the only real fun I find in this is how like sleazy it is, and it's definitely not going to be that with Jodie Foster in it, right? It's going to have a much higher air of prestige, and I think that doesn't work nearly as well as this kind of being a grimy, high budget exploitation flick, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah. It would be more like The Accused 2 if she was in it, which is a very like disturbing and powerful performance in film. But this movie goes in the completely other direction of it. So I was blown away by that. There's lots of cast that went in and out of it apparently, but when they settled on this, I do want to nugget that again though. It's the idea of $70 million on a movie like this. Man, we just don't do that anymore, and I miss that. I wish we could get back to that. I think nowadays that kind of money goes into limited series and TV productions and things like that. The latest thing that I'm now fascinated with is this whole Elizabeth Holmes Theranos trial, and I know I'm way behind on all that, but Hulu's got an incredible looking limited series coming out on that, and I'm like, oh, that's where these kind of movies get made now. They string them out to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the streaming stuff like this, you could totally see this getting strung out to a TV show, right? You'd have like one episode dedicated entirely to the trial. You'd have, like you could see it. But
Yeah,
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, absolutely. This movie moved really fast. One of the things I liked about it, but I can see it being a limited series and opening up all of those facets that we missed and just kind of had to skip over.
I was kind of blown away by how much they pack into it, and we'll get into that. I guess now's the time to do the ye old plot summary. So I will try to do this. Shout out to Ron, who's a little under the weather. We wrote this with him in mind, so I'm going to try to read this in my best Ron snark. I don't know that I can do it, but we'll see. So Libby Parsons, played by Ashley Judd, enjoys living the good life with her husband Nick, Bruce Greenwood, and their young son Maddie in coastal Washington State. But after a weekend sailing cruise and with her and Nick goes awry, Libby wakes up to the Coast Guard accusing her for murder because Nick's nowhere to be found and she's holding the bloody knife. Tried and convicted of that murder, Libby leaves her son with her friend Angela. She goes off to prison. Angela brings Maddie for a few visits, but when they stop, Libby tracks her down to San Francisco and calls her. And in the background, she hears evidence that Nick is indeed alive and knows that he has set her up for the insurance money before running off with their son and Angela. Unable to find help or anybody that really cares, Libby is befriended by a fellow inmate, Margaret, who tells Libby that once she gets out of prison, she can go kill Nick because they can get tried twice for the same crime. No, the legal advice of this movie should not be followed by anyone under any circumstances ever. So Libby does some of her time. She gets paroled after 6 years and is sent to a halfway house run by parole officer Travis Lehman. Lehman, who once himself was a prestigious law professor, lost it all due to his alcohol addiction. And Libby escapes from Lehman's custody, but as we all know, Tommy Lee Jones doesn't care, and he's going to continue to go after her. Libby finds out Angela was killed in a natural gas explosion and thinks Nick is up to his old tricks again. She finally finds him in New Orleans running a hotel under another alias. And she confronts him at a charity function saying she only wants her son and he agrees to meet her later. However, this is all set up as Nick knocks Libby out and locks her in a coffin at the cemetery. Nick returns to his hotel to find Lehman waiting to question him. And sure something is wrong about all this, Lehman uncovers that Nick is indeed a con man. He intercepts Libby, who has freed herself from the tomb, and he goes back to the hotel to confront Nick. He does, and while Nick tries to bribe him, Lehman records Nick saying that he killed Libby, thinking that he had in the cemetery fiasco. To his surprise, but no one else's, Libby emerges with a gun and some bad legal advice from the prison yard. So she learns where her son is, but before she can shoot him, Nick attacks. There's a fight. Lehman gets shot in the shoulder, but Libby eventually gets the gun and kills Nick. Lehman agrees to help Libby seek a pardon back in Washington, but first they stop off at the posh boarding school in Georgia to pick up her son, and credits roll. And that's a lot that they jam into the hour and 40 plus minutes of this movie. Wow, y'all. I guess the way to start is, and the thing that I was blown away by with this movie is how our director introduces characters in sort of these short scene vignette things that kind of meld one into the other. We're sort of catching up with people's lives as they're happening. And I feel like I needed an opening like last week on Double Jeopardy, because I feel like I'm coming into season 2 of Knots Landing here or something.
Yeah, I think you absolutely know what type of person each character is when you meet them. And I got to give it to my Brian, who called exactly what the spoilers were, like immediately. He was like, "Oh, I bet that other woman killed him and now she's going to adopt the kid." And like before anything happened, I was like, "All right, if you get this right, I'll give you credit." And it went exactly as predicted. So, I think it's how they're introduced led into that a lot, and I agree with you, Jay.
It does move fast. I mean, that is one thing that it's got going for it. Because of that, we don't get a lot of what you could really consider any kind of character. I mean, Bruce Greenwood is just so unbelievably skeezy from minute one in this movie that there's no like tragedy to be felt here in terms of like it already starts off with you kind of feeling like Libby's sort of like, yeah, you didn't see this coming, Libby? Really? Like your husband's literally oozing sleaze. Like he leaves a slime trail everywhere he goes from minute one. But I mean, I guess when you're doing kind of a pot boiler like this, it does deal in archetypes. It does deal in caricatures because that's how they keep it so short and sweet. And so in that regard, it actually does its job fairly efficiently. I can't complain about it too much as far as that goes.
This movie is nothing if not efficient. I will give it that.
Yeah, I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that they were running way behind, and they got people involved who were like, "Look, we got to move, and we're gonna move on this fast." And the note I wrote down about Libby, I was like, "Well, she clearly loves sailing more than anything on the planet, except maybe her son, who she lays the worst emotional guilt trip on that you should do for a 4-year-old. Like, who am I going to sail with if you run and fall in love with somebody?" I'm like, "Lady, shut the hell up! What are you doing?"
That's weird, right?
Right? I was like, "That's a little scary there on the front end." But did y'all get the sense that like her and Nick's relationship, there was a lot of like fire there, but there wasn't a lot of like companionship going on. Like it was very, I don't know, like I'm with you, Mike. I think she knew he was a sleaze bag, but she was there with the kid. She was like, "Well, whatever, we have a good life. I don't really care if he's a oozy kind of slick person because we get by with it." But I don't know, man. It was a very weird relationship.
When Bruce Greenwood's in sleaze mode, like that's the one thing I'll say, we can kind of talk a little more about it as we go on. But the one thing in this movie is like everybody's majorly on autopilot except maybe Ashley Judd. I mean, Tommy Lee Jones is dollar store fugitive in this. Yes. And Bruce Greenwood could play these roles in his sleep. There's nobody, Judd seems invested because this was, one of her first major sort of starring roles. She's coming off a Time to Kill when she signs on to this, and she seems invested, but everybody else is just not sleepwalking because they're not boring, but they're definitely not exactly stretching some new muscles doing this.
I think they all know what kind of movie they're in, and I will applaud actors who figure that out, and they let you in on the secret too early on. Like, look, y'all, we know, just go with it. Just grab your popcorn and hang on because it's seasons 2 through 5 of Knots Landing. It's okay, y'all. Like, just come with us. You wanted to be here.
Yeah, and I think Tommy Lee Jones embodies that because Tommy Lee Jones is Tommy Lee Jones in this movie. He's given the people what they want, and that's Tommy Lee Jones.
Right. We'll talk about it when we get to it, but his last line does not feel like something that was written. It was more like, "Oh, thank God this is over." It's sort of the way it comes off. But yeah, I don't know. There's lots of fun here to be had, though. But even though it is cheesy, I love how we're introduced with people, and like you get the MacGuffin of all MacGuffins. Anybody here a Kandinsky fan? I only know that artist at all, I'm sad to say, because I saw this movie and I was like, well, that must be important. And I don't know who, like the screenwriter, who had a love affair with Wassily Kandinsky, but man, they decided we're going to make that the thing that will unravel all of the one-armed man mystery of this movie.
I can't say I am particularly. I mean, I guess I might be. I don't know. But this movie is the first I've heard of Kandinsky.
I knew of him because I took humanities in high school and college, and that was just for whatever, one of the names that stuck with me. I mean, I couldn't, you could have put like 5 of his paintings up and I wouldn't have been able to tell you that he painted them, but the name I remember.
Yeah. Well, and I love that they do make a joke out of that. They're like, no, it's not Picasso. It's Bruce Greenwood's like in this whole high horse about it. Like, no, it's better. And I'm like, I feel you, man, because I will argue that Halloween 3 is worth watching too. I'm there. I hear you, So, I mean, you love what you love and you go with it. But I like that they drop that. And I realize that, again, we're doing character motivation and character introduction by speed here. I mean, by NASCAR type speed, but it works because, again, immediately who all these people are. And I'm glad your Brian caught it too, because again, Annabeth Gish, go back to Hiding Out, other things. I've always thought she was like the good girl next door, even though she's played lots of different roles. But I immediately thought the same thing that your Brian thought. It was like, oh yeah, Angel's in on it. Like, it's clear. Like, that's the other woman. Like, and it's just the look they give each other. Like, then I didn't even notice it until this time, but her and Bruce Greenwood give each other a look when Ashley Judd's Libby is setting up that whole like, oh, can you watch the kid while we go out on this sailboat that my husband may or may not have the money to buy me or whatever, but he's going to anyway. And she just looks like, of course I can. Of course. It's so sinister. But I wrote down the words teacher and friend in quotes. I was like, yeah, like that never ends well in these kind of movies.
Yeah. So innocent.
So we go sailing when, where it takes me away to where wine, sex, and bloody knives always seem to get me.
Well, yeah, I was going to say they have sex. So, one of them's going to die, allegedly, in this case.
Yeah. And I had forgotten that the sex scene goes on as long as it does. Not to dwell on something, and be weird, but like, I'm like, that goes on a lot longer than I remembered. I was like, there's a lot of like stuff happening in there. I guess they wanted to sell us that maybe they did have chemistry, even though they seem to hate each other.
When I saw that, I was like, I wonder if Ron would call this a gross sex scene.
I say Silent Night, Deadly Night 5 still has a grosser scene than this, but
I would agree.
It's right up there, but yeah. So
I do think it's fascinating, though, again, not to dwell on weird period stuff, but when it started, I'm like, oh, that's 100% going to be a body double. And nope, it's Ashley Judd, which is, not something even in 1999, not something you typically expected to see your headliner in a $70 million thriller, especially a headliner that at that point had already established a fair bit of clout. I think she'd already gotten her award recognition for that, the indie movie that she did and stuff. So I was a little surprised. I was like, that's not something that you're going to see today. That's for sure.
No, definitely. I didn't expect that either. And then to wake up with the frigging horror movie that has happened on that boat. I just want to know, because they never explain it. And I kind of feel like it's probably a dropped scene somewhere, but I'm like, what pig did Nick have in the hold of that boat that he slaughtered on the top of it? Because that's a lot of blood, y'all. Like, wow, somebody's got an iron deficiency.
Maybe he had blood taken, like he donated blood and just kept the bag.
He Gone Girled it? That's what you're saying?
Yeah.
Spoiler alert. But yeah. So, yeah, I mean, really, like that.
Another movie I started watching this week.
They all lead to each other.
I know.
It is jarring to see how disoriented, she is. And I mean, how would you not be, right? And of course she picks up the knife and I'm like, oh, don't pick up the murder weapon.
Right.
Yeah, like she's falls right into it. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like going up the stairs when there's an axe murderer at your front door. It doesn't make sense. Don't pick up the knife.
Right.
But there were not murder podcasts and documentaries. Not a ton out at the time. So maybe she didn't know.
Yeah. 48 Hours was new. Yeah.
Anytime I hear somebody say it makes no sense, I always immediately go to Knives Out now. But it compels me, though. It makes no damn sense. But it compels me, though. I love that
movie, though.
I will give this movie credit for taking time to do these next things. It does them in fast forward, but we get the Coast Guard coming up and they try to explain to her, like, it was real windy. It's 50 degrees in the water. What's going on? You can tell she knows all these people. So they're trying to be like, you wouldn't really do this, would you? But maybe you did. And when they come to like arrest her, the sheriff and her lawyer friend or whatever, like that's I don't know, a lesser movie would not take the time to have that moment in it. And so I'll praise the movie for this. It is a sleazy thriller or whatever, but it has these sort of quiet moments where she's like, don't put handcuffs on me in front of my kid, like I'll go with you, like all that stuff. I appreciated that. And I'm kind of blown away that like we get the whole courtroom action. Like, did they bother to go with that at all? I did not expect this movie to do that. I thought we would just sort of forward and, she's in prison or whatever. But I guess the shorthand of it. But I got questions, Mike, and this is where your expertise comes in. That line of questioning by the prosecutor, you serious, Clark? Like, is that I know that's not how that goes down, but holy cow, how did the judge not rule for that objection?
Yeah, I barely honestly even remember that because I immediately, as soon as the prosecutor started questioning, I will fully admit I kind of tuned out because I'm like, I know where this is like the only way I'm going to finish this movie is if I just kind of close my eyes and get through this courtroom scene. You mentioned, Jay, you're surprised they put it in there. I honestly think the movie would have been better if they hadn't, because it was everything about it was so bad that why bother? Because it doesn't help. All that ultimately matters is that she loses and she's convicted.
Right. And
so we don't really need to necessarily see it. He's set up the perfect crime here, basically, because she's got means, motive. They established she's got means, motive, and opportunity. And so there's no body. I mean, this is not a slam dunk murder trial by any means, but it's certainly not one that would be hard for a prosecution to win. So then why are we going to waste a bunch of time on, questions that are going to get objections and stuff like that? And then you get the other part where Libby just starts, she's on the stand and she's just going and she's, I didn't kill my husband and all this stuff. And then no, you don't get to do that. We don't just let witnesses talk. That's not really how this whole process works. And in fact, her attorney should have been standing up going, get to stop. So it is what it is. It's not the worst I've seen, but it's certainly way, way down there in terms of actual legal accuracy. And I don't think the scene was actually that dramatically compelling either, because we're already feeling for Libby and that doesn't really help us. It just, again, makes everybody look kind of dumb for not immediately thinking that maybe this was a setup, so. Yeah.
Well, I agree with you too. They already have that extra scene when they're interrogating her and her lawyer lays out, like, here's the case in front of you. Like, that's all we needed to know is that did you had $2 million in life insurance? No, I wasn't aware of that. Or maybe I knew that. I don't know. I just signed some paper. You lay out all of that information. You don't need the court scene. You could just have her be pulled out and you do the flash mob with the, when photographers took real pictures and stuff that wasn't all digital. It's like woman kills her husband. Like, you could do that, little montage, because this movie's full of those anyway. So why not do that there and cut down that courtroom scene? The only thing I could think of is that they must have just really liked what they were getting out of that. But even I know as a layperson, like, that's not remotely how any of that works. It's ridiculous. It's not even like fun though. Like, even like goofy courtroom scenes, like, that aren't accurate either, at least are compelling. That wasn't even that interesting to watch.
Inaccuracy notwithstanding, the scripting of it and the delivery of the script was not good. It just fell short, especially for the prosecutor. I couldn't figure out if it was bad writing or bad acting. And either way, they're writing and they're acting and getting paid for it and not me. So I say that with the utmost respect of the people who, had to do it, but it didn't hit right. It wasn't delivered well.
Well, and not to get too deep in the weeds, but jumping just slightly ahead, one of the other things that really bothers me from an accuracy standpoint in this is she gets out of prison. She gets paroled in 6 years. Okay, doing what you said, Jay, where he lays out the case for her and then we skip to it, not to rewrite the movie, but it would have made more sense if after talking to her lawyer, she decides to take a plea to something like manslaughter. Because if she goes to trial, they're charging her with murder one. There's no question. You ain't getting paroled in 6 years if you're convicted of murder one at trial. You're doing 25 to life, and you're maybe getting paroled at 15 or 20 years. So, like, it blows my mind that they went that route when it would have made more sense and actually would have kind of made it more compelling for us if she's like, I'm screwed. I'm totally screwed here. I didn't do this, but I'm screwed. There's a 3rd-degree felony on the table. I can be out in 5 to 6 years and see my son again, or I can die in prison. And, if we're to believe her whole point for doing all of this is she loves her son so much, it would make perfect sense for her to take that deal and plead and get out. And then we cut out the whole courtroom scene and we get, I think, a more narratively compelling arc for her anyway.
No, and I agree with you completely. That's an excellent point. I hadn't thought about that, but I'm like, yeah, they should have totally plead her down because they've got her dead. Right? There's no, I mean, people talk about like, oh, circumstantial. That's how every freaking case is, y'all. Like you build bricks, right? Like that's every lawyer I've known says, yeah, you just build them a piece at a time. You get the jury to believe because you lead them where you want them to go. And it's amazing to me that they bothered to put all this in there again, like I said, but it was so completely unsatisfying. Like we didn't need it. Like narratively, you could have got to the same place without having to drag us through the 10 minutes of this, because that's the funny part of it is she's going to wind up in prison no matter what. And we literally go from her laying her head down on a table to waking up in the women's prison the next day. So it's a flash forward. But of course she's going to leave the kid with Angela because she still trusts Angela. Which nobody in the audience was at that point. Lindsey and I clearly turned on Angela quick. Were you on her side of the art? Or did you think, oh no, she's totally bad?
No, of course she was bad. I mean, first of all, again, that's just it's the Siskel and Ebert, Roger Ebert's conservation of characters. Annabeth Gish is not a nobody. She's a fairly well-known actress. She's not going to be in this movie just to be in it for a couple of scenes to take this kid under her wing, right? Like she's going to have a bigger role and a bigger narrative to play, or you don't cast Annabeth Gish. So no, I knew right away.
Yet they completely subvert that because she gets one more scene on a damn telephone. So I'm going to talk about how mad I am that they would write her off screen, but we'll get there. But yeah, so we've got to go to prison now because this is what we do. And yeah, Libby in prison. It's not going well, gang. Like it's to say she's having a rough time adjusting is putting it mildly. But they gloss over so much of that. I think I'm also watching this movie in a post Orange is the New Black world, where I've seen this narrative stretched out and worked out, and that's an incredible story in its own that it's based off of too. But I just feel like I can't watch this movie and not realize like, oh, I've seen this same thing happen 55,000 other times in other movies, only to be capped by the fact that we get a friggin' training montage in a prison somewhere in the middle of this. But yeah, we'll get to the training montage, but I don't know. Her in prison seems like we're just going to stick Ashley Judd in some corners and make her feel like she's really out of place because she is really out of place. But then all of a sudden, like she seems to acclimate just overnight. It's weird.
I think the timeline of this is a little hard to follow sometimes. So I don't know if she necessarily acclimated overnight. I think it was over the course of a few months, but the movie doesn't do a great job making that clear. But that being said, I really liked her bunkmates. And I think that I don't think she realized this, certainly not at the time, but I think the fact that she killed her husband gave her a little more clout in that women's prison than maybe some of the other crimes that women were there for. And I do love that line that was like, she was like, I didn't do it. Or something like that. And her bunkmate was like, he probably deserved it.
I know mine did. Yeah. Which I love that.
That's the one.
Like, that was good.
Yeah.
So
when they said that,
I was like, I'm going to like this prison scene, but.
When they said that, did anybody else immediately go to, he had it coming from Chicago?
Yes.
Or was that
I thought the same thing. Yes. Thank you. Yes. I had that flash in my head. I was like, yes.
We are in good company here, gentlemen.
Yes. We are all, I think we're all marked for that one. So, and you can, once again, go back in the archives. You can hear me review that movie, which I love that musical though. But yes, I had the same thought. I was like, oh yes, let's just get, if we had the Cell Block Tango, like just cued like somewhere in the background, if the musical cue had been there, that would have been cute. That would have been the kind of drop that like, oh, this movie should have done that, but oh well. I love her bunkmates though. I love Robin Mafia coming in here because she's always playing like this tough ass chick in any kind of movie she's in. I think I know her best in terms of like lawyering kind of stuff, Mike. I don't know if you remember, she played Michael Douglas's lawyer in Disclosure. And she has a great turn in that. And it's a really fun actress anytime she's on the screen.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't remember that until you just said it. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, she totally did. That's right.
Yeah, she's fun to see here, even though she's given a lot of short shrift because she's just in a couple of scenes. I mean, we see Libby, not getting it together. She doesn't know what to do. And, the son comes to see her and the little ABC song, that was kind of sweet and sad. And, I was like, oh man, we're pulling on the old heartstrings here. But then all of a sudden that just all cuts off and she can't find her. And I got to say, I'll give Libby some credit here. And I'll say this again later in the movie. She's a good con artist herself. She knows how to like find out info. Like she, if she would have taken that deal, like you said, Mike, she could have got out and been a good PI for somebody. She seemed to know what she was doing.
And she picked up on the internet real quick.
Right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're going to talk about the dude bro that helps her with the internet in a little bit. But yeah, no, I love her, like her tricky phone work that she calls the school like, oh, I haven't gotten my severance check. Can you check my address? And they're just like, sure, let me read it for you. I'm like, nah. Even in 1999, I worked in an office. You didn't give out shit like that over the phone.
The other problem I have with that, and again, not to be the pedantic douche, but that's kind of why you wanted me on here, is calls from jail have to be made collect. Yeah. So like, you're not just calling, you don't get to just call people from jail, right? Like it's a collect call. They have to accept it. You get a phone call that says, this is, San Quentin prison calling, prisoner so-and-so from San Quentin calling. Do you accept the call? So like, we've got these people at the school being like, oh yeah, it's a prison, I'll just accept it. Oh, you want some personal information? Sure, that's fine. Here, have all of this, like, right. And then like later, jumping just slightly ahead when she calls Angela, like again, Angela's like, oh, Libby's calling me apparently. Let me just answer that and then be surprised when she's pissed at me.
Right. No, I'm with you. But you know why they didn't know that? We hadn't heard Serial yet. We hadn't heard that great intro of all the calls coming in. So yeah, we didn't know that. So, but you're right. Yeah, I think I only knew that again because I had worked for people that were in the justice system at different jobs and things like that through college, and so I was aware of that too. That like, oh, you can't just randomly drop a dime in the phone at the prison and roll call Casey Kasem and get a request in. Like he's got to accept the call. So it's that is a little ridiculous. But I'm like, they got to find her some way to find her son, and I'm like, man, she has a lot of access to stuff that I didn't know that you got if you were a convicted felon, like felony 1, So like, isn't she like going to be in a special part of the prison or something? I don't know enough about prisons, but I wouldn't think she had that much run of the place. There's also, I don't know if y'all noticed or not, there's like not a single guard or warden in this prison. It seems to be run completely by the inmates, and they get along just fine. Like it's amazing. Like, you do a prison movie, I at least one time got to see some asshole rattle the bars with a stick. Like, come on, what are we doing?
I think they tried that. I mean, not well, but they tried that with the bunkmates and they tried to bully her around a little bit. And then she stole their hearts with how sad she was. Yeah. I guess.
Like they became like her Shawshank friends real fast. And that's what I needed a little bit more of that because again, we do that, but she does get that great call. And this is the last of Annabeth Gish we get to see. And I'm kind of pissed at this point because I wanted her to be more in this. Cause at this point, Angela's not only involved, she's deeply involved in this. And I needed to like hear more about that. I needed a scene with her and Bruce Greenwood talking about what they were going to do next, and I wonder if that's cut somewhere on the floor, but I just missed that because I feel like we just cut her out of the movie after this. She gets written off.
For the sake of efficiency, I guess.
Yeah, but she's like an integral part of the plot. That's the thing. They go from Washington State to San Francisco, and I don't know. Like I do think it's funny that like Libby did pick the perfect time to call when Nick's going to walk in and the kid's gonna out like, oh, hey dad, like the kid wouldn't say like, Mom, when are you gonna come live with Dad and Angela? The minute he picks up the phone to talk to Mom. Or if they just brainwash this poor kid, forever. I don't know. It's the same kid from scene to scene, and then he grows up to be the kid in Arlington Road later. But I don't know. I was just blown away by how fast all this is blowing by us here.
It really did. I didn't feel the length at all. I mean, before I knew it, it was over. So.
Well, it's because you've got 4 movies in one, right? You've got you've got dollar store Lifetime movie, then you get dollar store John Grisham thriller, then you get like dollar store Caged Heat, and then finally we end with dollar store Fugitive, and like, you can't fill the length because every 20 minutes you're getting a completely different movie, which is on one hand to the movie's benefit, because if you can't make, any one of these movies is bad, but if you're giving me 4 of them, I kind of have to go along with the fact that I'm never in one bad movie for longer than 20 minutes. So you just get to change it up.
That's a great way to put it.
All that dollar store stuff, it made me think like, what if the Daily Double was a dollar store? So, Double Jeopardy. Since we're going to play with that. But we get our training montage again. I'm blown away by this. I'm like, oh, she's got to hulk up to like realize what she's going to do. And then Margaret doles out what may be the worst advice ever. So Mike, this is why we brought you on, to explain to us why Double Jeopardy doesn't work like this.
Hold on. I got to get my mouth guard in so I'm not grinding my teeth anymore. Okay. All right. So legal 101 here. All right. Double jeopardy is a clause in the Constitution. It's in the 5th Amendment that basically says you cannot be tried for the same crime twice. As with all things in the law, a bunch of exceptions, right? So for instance, but what it basically means, what it's really there to protect is if you go to trial and are found not guilty, we're out of luck. Like I don't get to go find more evidence. And if I roll the dice and try you and I lose as a prosecutor, I don't get to go find more evidence and try you again. But that applies to a specific crime that occurs at a specific place, a specific time, a specific location, and under a specific jurisdiction. So it does not mean that if I kill you and fail and you convict me and I get out and then kill you again in a completely different state, you don't get to. That's an absurd interpretation of how Double Jeopardy works. And it's the name of the friggin' movie. Like, I cannot. I mean, I understand that the guys that wrote The Rock probably aren't legal experts, Weisberg and Cook who wrote this. True. Based on, the way things work in The Rock, which is a movie I love. I should say I adore The Rock. Yes. I'm not, yeah. but this is so fundamentally ridiculous in terms of it's, I'm trying to think of even a good analogy. It would kind of be like saying, like calling your movie Gravity and everybody is like walking on ceilings. Like you just don't like that's not even a good analogy, but like this just isn't Double Jeopardy. They like found a term that they thought sounded cool for a movie and then sort of retroactively wrote a movie around it. And they're like, oh shit, the movie we wrote around it doesn't actually, because I refuse to believe that with this many smart people making this movie, somebody somewhere in line didn't go, that ain't how fucking Double Jeopardy works. Like somebody somewhere said that.
Tommy Lee Jones went to fucking Harvard. Like,
yeah, like somebody somewhere said that. It's directed by Bruce Beresford, a traditionally really great director. Yes. He's not an idiot either. Like I know he's Australian. He doesn't understand American law, but still, I think he probably would have gone, I'm not sure this is how this actually works here. But this just feels to me like there's some producer somewhere on this who just went, oh, people aren't going to care. It's Ashley Judd and, it's Tommy Lee Jones. It's that guy from The Fugitive. And nobody's going to give a shit about that kind of stuff. And I literally I remember I did not see this in the theaters like you, Jay, because I saw the trailer. And even at that point, I hadn't gone to law school yet. This was the year before I started law school, but I had done undergrad pre-law stuff and that. And even at that point, like my teeth were grinding. Like I'm sitting there in the theater grinding my teeth down to nothing. And I didn't see it because I'm like, there's no way this movie isn't going to piss me off. And I watched it when it came out on video and it pissed me off. And I hadn't watched it until I watched it for you because I love you guys. And that is the kind of sacrifice I will make for Film Strip. But no, this is so, I do not understand how you hang the hook of your entire movie on this thing. And it is so just not even remotely what Double Jeopardy is. It's lazy. It's ridiculous. To me, it overshadows what other joy there can be kind of pulled from this movie. And there can be some, as we've talked a little bit, and we'll talk more about it, but it just overshadows all of that. And when we get to the end of the movie, I'm going to get even more pissed off about it, but I'll save that for when we get to the end of the movie.
No, and thank you for walking us through that because I knew you would be able to do so.
I didn't talk to a single attorney friend, but when it was brought up and she told her about it in prison, I was like, I don't think that's correct. Like, you would definitely lose that case. You would get sent back to jail for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, prison.
Yeah.
Which is different from jail, which we learned from the movie.
Yeah, there's gonna be lots of laws broken here in a little bit, but I did get a good laugh at it because I started thinking to myself, okay, so they came up with this, they Googled a term, looked one up in a dictionary, whatever, and they went with this thing. And so what else could they have called this movie to make it work? And I was like, well, if it was on Lifetime, it would be like, she demanded justice, or, he thought he got away, or, something like that. I was like, well, they weren't going to slap that on a $70 million flick. So I don't know what else they could have called this, but I don't know. But they could have gone with the sailing motif because they just dropped that like a hot rock after the first act. But I don't know. I can't come up with a better title for it, but it is a problem because once you realize that like this woman's entire motivation completely changes for a minute, and it's a narrative problem in the movie because we're led to believe she's doing all of this. Why? Because of the kid. But now her motivation is, I'm going to kill him and get the kid. And I'm like, well, I don't think you can't really be both of those things because that doesn't work as a character either. You don't get to do an evil thing and get the good thing too.
Well, and they double down on the stupidity because Margaret's a lawyer. Right. Like, because she says that. There's a throwaway line where she says something like, they disbar you if you kill your husband or something like that. So she is a lawyer, which is like, if she had just been, so there's this term, we call them jailhouse lawyers. They're these people that are long time prison and jail folks, and they read a lot. They read a lot of law books and stuff like that. And they give legal advice to other inmates. The problem is they're not actually lawyers. And so 90% of the time, 97% of the time, the advice they're giving is akin to the advice that Margaret gives her here as far as misunderstanding Double Jeopardy. So why not just make her a jailhouse lawyer? Why actually establish that she was a real honest to God lawyer and just, sort of piss on my profession, I guess.
I feel the same way about every movie where the counselor sleeps with their patients. I'm just like, no, it's not what we do. Or somebody that works at a college doesn't know anything. I'm like, no, please, we're not all morons. I feel you. I feel your pain. I'm with you too. I'm like, she didn't need to be a lawyer. She could have just been some smart lady that read some books, right? Like that would have been more believable at least, because then at least the advice is coming from a bad place. Like, oh, well, there's a reason. Well, where did you go to law school? Was it at night? Did you mail in the form? I'm curious to know. But either way, she's gonna get out. She's gonna get her revenge. We'll give the Margaret character this. She does a good job of coaching her up for the parole board scene.
I like that scene
because Ashley Jump is going to roll up in there like Red from Shawshank Redemption and go, I don't really give a shit. And I don't think that would have worked out. So she did feed her the right lines. But I can only imagine like she knows that from maybe her previous career, but also maybe she's helped other people get out of prison. But she's had to test that out with people that like it didn't work before, right? So there's people running around that yard going like, "Don't be listening to that Margaret lady." So she'll tell you the wrong thing to say in front of the parole board.
She told me what to say, and I got 15 more years.
Right?
Well, maybe she tested it on herself by accident. I'm sure she had a parole hearing at some point and she bombed it and, just trying to be nice. I don't know.
You already alluded to this earlier, Mike, but there's no way she's getting paroled inside of 6 years for that.
I'm so glad you brought this up. I could not figure out how she only got 6 years.
Yeah,
let's answered, but
yeah, let's do the math on this. All right, she's convicted. So what we've got here is we've got a woman who allegedly took her husband out on a sailboat, signed a $2 million life insurance policy like a month beforehand, took her husband out on a sailboat, didn't not only killed him, but didn't like shoot him or anything, brutally stabbed him and threw him over the side of the boat. And then came back and lied about it when she got back. Like that's in Texas. She's not, not only is she not getting parole in 6 years, she's going to the gas chamber in 6 years, right? Like, I mean, that's, this just, there's no way somebody that commits a crime like that. And that's one of the things where, Jay, you mentioned it's a horror scene earlier, right? That's another thing that they could have done if they'd actually wanted to make a good movie, done a little better, is made it a little more ambiguous about how he died so that we can maybe believe that she only gets 6 years. But that amount of blood, that brutal of a murder, are you kidding me? That's a prosecutor's making a career out of prosecuting that lady. Like they are literally that's the type of case that sets you up to run for DA. That person's not getting paroled in 6 years. That person's dying in prison.
Right. Like I was blown away by just that nugget. I'm like, I know Ashley Judd looks young, so you can't age her up or whatever, but like that seems light for that because she Catherine Tremelled that dude. Like this is a Basic Instinct murder. Like for all they know, she was screwing him and stabbed him at the same time. For the way that everything's done. I'm like, either that or again, there's that cut scene where the judge admonishes that prosecutor for that horrendous line of questioning and says, "You better plea this shit down because that's not going to play in my courtroom, lady." I guess that got left on the fifth season of Law and Order or whatever. But yeah, it's horrendous how that goes. But we've got to get her to the thing because we've now had 4 movies in one. Well, we're about to get to the fourth one, which is Fugitive 2. Her story, and that's what the rest of this movie is. And I gotta say, Tommy Lee Jones maybe phoning in the performance as in I can know how to play this with my eyes closed, I can do it backwards, but he is giving one hell of a performance as Lehman. I loved this guy. I loved everything about him, his screwed up story, all of it. I had a blast every time he was on screen, chewing up scenery and just spitting out lines.
Agreed. What is not to love about, Tommy Lee Jones in general, but the way he played this character and just the way they played off of each other when they were in scenes together. And by together, I mean him and Libby, was so fun. What did he say for right off the bat? He was like, "You're going to be a problem."
Yeah, is this going to be a problem for you? Like he pulls up the picture of her kids. Like, is this a problem for you? And she gets to throw that at him later when there's.
But then at the end of that scene, well, not quite the end, but right before he sends her off to her room, I think he just looks right at her and says, "You're going to be a problem."
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, she was a problem for you.
The one thing I noticed this time watching the movie, having now just shit on it for 10 minutes, it noticeably the enjoyment level noticeably spikes as soon as Tommy Lee Jones shows up. Like now we're in a movie that's actually fun. And from here on out, there's still a lot of stuff that drives me nuts, but there's no question the back half of this movie, for me at least, is a hell of a lot more fun than the front half. Because we get Tommy Lee Jones, We get Ashley Judd going full, again, Dr. Richard Kimball, theme distaff Richard Kimball in this, being smart and figuring all this stuff out and tracking everybody down. And there's just a sense of fun here that I think was missing from the first half of the movie. He can do this in his sleep, but I'll watch Tommy Lee Jones do this in his sleep until the day I die. I mean, I got no problem with him being cranky like this. I love Firebirds. I'm like the only person on the planet that loves Firebirds.
No, I will ride for that movie too. Yes. Anytime you want to take Sean Young and put a pair of her underwear over Nick Cage's face so that he can learn how to shoot straight from a helicopter with a laser guided missile system, hell to the yes. Sign me up.
So and Tommy Lee Jones is doing cranky Tommy Lee Jones in that.
Yes,
so,
Lindsey, if you have not seen the greatness that is Firebird, you owe it to yourself.
You really do owe it to yourself.
I haven't, and I will now.
Good to yourself and your Brian for that. Yes.
I will. Yeah. Your sterling reviews.
Yes. Like I ride for that movie too. I'm with you. So, because it's just zany as hell and it's so much fun. But anyway, he does bring such a gleeful, don't give a damn about any of it. And that's sort of Tommy Lee Jones's performance secret, is that he kind of always does that. And I go back to it with the first thing I ever saw him in, y'all. He's always playing some version of what he thought Doolittle Lynn was like. and he's just sort of like, I don't know, whatever, and he's just sort of blowing through all this stuff. And I got such a kick out of him. But you nailed it too, Lindsey. He's exactly right. He knows this is a problem. And we get to see him. He doesn't play around like one of his other, people that's at the halfway house. She's out, instead of working at McDonald's, she's out hooking on the street, and he just busts her for it in front of everybody and lets the whole world see, like, nope, revoking that, going right back. And, I've known a few probation officers in my time, Mike, I'm sure you know, and still work with many of them. They kind of have to be that way. You can't play, right? Like it's got to be pretty hardcore if you're going to, get people to fly right and do right in society again.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can't do favors for the ones you like, because then you'll lose all of them if you do that. Now, that being said, in the real world, a law professor who lost his job because he's a drunk isn't going to be a parole officer. He's not going to pass the background checks and stuff like that. But again, sleazy pot boiler, that's not one of those things that hangs up. I've hopefully been on the show enough. People know I'm not this pedantic normally, but I figure I would just, I'm here. I'll point this stuff out.
Yes. No, we brought you here to do this. I will take full credit for that.
Yeah. I've really been looking forward to hearing all of your notes.
Yes. We set Lindsey up on this one. We told her. So.
Yeah. I was prepared and excited. We brought exactly what you're doing.
We brought in the ringer, So it's like why I have Lindsey on to do musical stuff too. There's a reason that she and I reviewed West Side Story with Mike from Amateur Art Tours. So I do. You called it that earlier, Lindsey. The way Libby learns how to use the Netscape Navigator with the college dude bro was hilarious to me, especially when he's trying to come on to her and she's like, well, I just got out of prison for killing my husband. Oh shit, I got a class or something.
The delivery of those lines, her delivery was perfection. I could eat it up. I could watch that scene every day. It was so great, because I just love the realization on Dude Bro's face that like, oh shit, he's not lying. And then I love how she just like puts that cherry on top with the, but a drink sounds great. I haven't been out in a really long time.
I don't know what it says about me that I'm watching Ashley Judd in that scene and I'm still going, yeah, still would. It's fine.
Yeah. I thought that while I was watching.
So we're all in agreement we would go for it. Yes.
Absolutely.
No, I love it though, because it does show you one thing, and this is not something that people talk enough about, I think, in her, is Ashley Judd has really good comic timing. And when you give her the right stuff, she can be very dry, very witty, very funny. She's got some good lines in that, A Time to Kill. with Matthew McConaughey, where they're scrubbing the floors and doing all that other shit back and forth. And she clearly has talent, and I love that they gave her a little moment like this, because again, a lesser movie would have just had Dude Bro show her how to use it and then walk off. No, we're going to get a little comedy in for part of it. So it's one of the times I appreciate the movie doing this. It's when you can tell, like, maybe they all knew, like, look, the first half of this is garbage. We just got to get through it, y'all, because once she gets free, it's gonna be funny. But I love how, like, she's supposed to be like getting a job and all this shit, and Libby's like, nah, she's immediately on the revenge tour, like she's doing nothing.
This is one of those other things that kind of drove me nuts about it. Is again, how is she not low-jacked?
Right?
She's like friggin' like going back, jumping a little ahead, but she's going to the library. And I guess the library she could like play off as like she's there looking for a job, filling out job applications and stuff. But like when you're on parole, especially if you're on parole for, again, committing a first-degree, brutal, god-awful, horrific murder, you're going to be ankle monitored. They're going to know where you are at all times, at least for the first probably year that you're on parole. Until you can establish that you're trustworthy. Certainly your first day, you're not just like, okay, at 8:00 you get to leave. You better be back at 5. Go forth and do whatever. Sin no more. That is not how it works.
Can we also talk about, we didn't talk about this, her job in the prison, she's like, is a cook at one point, but then at one point she's a barber. I'm like, why would you give the murder stabbing lady sharp implements? Because if she had got a job at a Great Clips, I'm like, damn, y'all's background checks suck, y'all. So, like, you don't let that lady do that. So,
I don't know how thorough Great Clips background checks are.
I'm just saying.
Maybe they are.
Well, I mean, they didn't do it, so I can't knock them for it. But I did laugh about that. I'm like, well, what's she going to do? Go become a barber? I'm like, wait a minute, why the hell would they let her do that to begin with in the prison? So, like, tempt her again.
Good behavior? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is, in fairness, I think that is kind of the point, because Lindsey, you mentioned, that it part of it is that's a lot of time jump. I mean, there's 6 years and like 15 minutes in that prison scene.
True.
And I do think narratively it's kind of trying to establish, and that does support how she got parole too. It supports that she has been this model prisoner, has been trustworthy. They are trusting her with scissors and implements like this and stuff like that. So I kind of get it. But again, it's all still so unbelievably ridiculous because it's all flawed from the beginning of making the murder so horrific to begin with that everything else kind of doesn't work. Like it's broken at the foundation, if that makes sense.
No, completely. And also broken at the foundation is whoever wrote this is understanding of how the internet works at all, even in 1999, that you could just randomly look this kind of shit up. Like, no, you still had to like get behind walls and find stuff. Like it wasn't, I want people to understand, maybe younger listeners to this, that I was alive and using the internet in 1999, and it was not nearly the wealth of information that this movie would tell you that it is. They did not have this shit just hanging out there like that. So I know we've got to get her to somehow or another figure out what school Angela was at so she can track her to the whatever next. I know we got to lead her down the path, but wow, they're asking me to take a lot of leaps here. That just,
I love that Dude Bro was even like, oh, you have her social security number?
Well, who knows?
I'm like,
that?
what are you going to do? Access the dark net from the local library? What are you doing with that information?
Say hi to Ross for me. I mean, come on. What are you doing? I've been married nearly 18 years. I still have to look it up. I don't know my wife's social security number. God, who knows that shit? I would know my random friend's social security number, sure. So, I don't know. It seems like even if you did, that wouldn't have helped you. But whatever. We have to get the thing along the way, because what we do get is her breaking into the school, very bad ninja like, and we get a chase though with a couple of like beach cops or something. Here. Like we get it, the Jeep gets totaled, and I'm like, wow, this movie decided we were going to have a damn action bullet scene in the middle of this, prison drama. I don't know where that came from, but it was not what I expected to happen. And I had totally forgotten that scene was in this movie.
I would be interested to know if Jeep paid for product placement, because honestly, Jeep for the win. That thing rolled a few times, and those cops popped right out and caught her anyway.
Right. Which
that roll bar worked.
Layman shows up and takes her back. No, she literally just tried to kill 2 cops. She's immediately going back to prison, but she's going to jail first. Cops typically don't like it when you roll their cars. They're not just like, oh, your PO's here. It's fine. It's fine. You can just go. Yeah.
Even if those were rent-a-cops for the school, which, by the way, what kind of school has those cops? But anyway, those were clearly like sheriff's deputies. Yes, they do not deal with the destruction of property, or you tried to kill them.
I also had a hard time. Here's where I got lost in that scene. Is she had this whole really, I mean, not the best prison training montage I've ever seen, but a legit prison training montage, and she couldn't outrun 2 chubby beach cops.
I mean, running in the sand's tough, I'm just gonna say. So
well, sure, but they were running in the sand too.
I mean, I really was surprised the way that we did, because it's a great scene, but I felt like I was watching like the scene at the beginning of Jaws, which I know it's on the other coast, but still, you had this little picket fence thing and run along the sand. I thought we were getting a callback to that at some point. But either way, they turn her over to the PO because, as we've established in this movie, he's the almighty god of the law enforcement world. So he's going to take her back to prison and handcuffs her to the door, but don't take the damn car keys. I mean, the fact that they at least set up that he's pouring whiskey into his coffee maybe explains why that happens, but come on, man. Like that, I mean, I know it's got to be the convenience sake, but it's a little too convenient at that point. But I will get a kick out of the fact that she backs that thing up and runs it forward several times to break that door handle, and no one on that ferry notices it at all. I've been on a few ferries; they're not that loud. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I will say though, it did lead us to one of the most beautiful shots in the entire film, which. I will say, too, the second half of the movie we already talked about was much better than the first. But visually, it's also much more interesting. I think that the cinematographers had a lot more fun with how things were shot. And it probably helps, too, that they're also shooting in a place like New Orleans later in the movie. But that was my first, those underwater shots I will live and die for. I love them.
Well, yeah, when the car's falling away from the two of them, that is pretty good.
Well, and then as they're swimming up and she grabs the gun and she's swimming away.
Yeah, no, it's well done. I don't know if that was done in a tank or, how they pulled that off, but it looks pretty good. I mean, it's gorgeous scenery because I think that's when they were in like Vancouver, which is going to double for Colorado in a little bit. And they shot a lot of that stuff up there because I've been up there and it's gorgeous. I mean, it looks all like that, but I was like, man, she's really rolling the dice of like, well, I don't care. I'm rolling off the end of this damn dock with you or without you, fugitive man. So come on and we'll take a swim. But I do love she does get away in a legit way. She has to bash him over the head, which I was like, shit, somebody got to save Tommy Lee Jones, but he's a Timex. He can just take it. But I don't know. I love that she gets away. And all I could think was like, wouldn't every cop within like 20 miles know where this woman was at that moment, Mike?
Every man house, outhouse, dog house within a 20-mile radius is gonna be searched at this point. Like there is no way that she makes it to Colorado. This woman would immediately. She has now attempted to kill 3 cops, and we already know that she's a convicted murderer. This woman would jump to the top of the FBI's most wanted list. She'd be, and this is 99. It's pre 9/11. So we didn't have things like terrorism watch lists and stuff, but it's not like we didn't have the friggin' guy who ran America's Most Wanted. Like she'd be the number one story on America's Most Wanted that night, there's just, and then again, this is one of those times I know it's a pot boiler, but boy, does this movie really stretch you have got to have a friggin' Gumby level suspension of disbelief to go along with this movie. And I like action movies. So trust me, I got a flexible suspension of disbelief, but this one, there are so many things in this that are a bridge too far. But again, I will reiterate my point. At least this stuff in the second half, it's just as dumb as the stuff in the first half, but it is much more fun.
Yes.
It's much more fun to watch her break those cuffs off that car. And especially once, Tommy Lee Jones gets on the case, tracking her down and starts figuring out what's going on. It gets a lot more enjoyable to watch, as much as there's always a part of my brain that's going, wow, you're 45 years old, Mike. You don't have a lot of time left on this world. Why are you using it to watch this?
Because you love us. That is why. I suckered you into it. No, you're right though. It is just as dumb. I will point out that Washington State to Colorado is not exactly next door. That takes a lot to do, but whatever. So we're just going to take the Bundy route and say it happens. And she's there. And so she goes to visit mom, who conveniently has, I don't know, $7 or $8 grand buried in the tomato garden. Good for you, I guess. I mean, yeah, I did get a laugh out of, like, I always said there was money in tomatoes. So I'm like, well, I guess that's the only place you would go, is you'd go to somewhere that knew you, which luckily she's from, the next door town that Texas Chainsaw Massacre takes place in, and nobody ever talks about anything. Because, like, wait a minute, Libby, good to see you. When did you get out? Like, everybody in that town would have heard about it at church for 6 damn years or something. But the beauty parlor,
bless her heart.
Right. Yes. Where was that? But anyway, we got to get her, because I think at some point someone told the screenwriters, this woman doesn't have any money and we don't want her, like, to commit real crime, like rob a bank or anything. So what are we going to do? Like, she already hit Tommy Lee Jones in the head. What are you going to do for money? Okay. She goes,
Deus Ex Mama.
Yes.
Deus Ex Mama.
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I mean, she did kind of commit real crime. She did charge an Armani suit to another woman's hotel room.
Yeah, she does that later.
And tried to kill several people.
Yeah, she has tried to kill 3 cops at this point. So we shouldn't gloss over that.
But karma, she ended up in a casket with a dead body. So.
I mean, but conveniently, we're going to talk about that. She has the gun still on her because her husband's an idiot. But anyway.
I thought about that too. Yeah.
So anyway, she tracks her down. I love she tracks Angela, though, because of course she just magically remembers that social, so she's running the credit ad upon her. I bought a car in the last couple of years. You got to put out kind of identification. You can't just write stuff down. Like, you got to, like, put pieces of paper down and driver's licenses, things like that. You just don't get to, especially a friggin' Mercedes dealership. Please, come on, y'all. I mean, but I will say this though: while she's out hustling for information, we get to see Tommy Lee Jones do the same thing. And that is the funny scene when he goes to his old parolee and he's like, "Oh, that's fine. I know you can't give me any information. Does your employer know that you used to perform the art of blah, blah, blah?" She's basically a hooker. Like, no, I'll do it for you. I'll break the law for you, Mr. Lehman. And I was like, wow, he's just as much of a hustler as she is. And I don't know. I got a kick out of him doing that little scene.
Yeah, I mean, it's him doing what he does, right? Like, Tommy Lee Jones shaking people down is always just it's never not going to be fun, and again, at least here now we've talked about how much this movie moves, but the first part of it moves quickly, but it's not actually propulsive. It feels like we're just dropping scenes in order. Here now we're starting to get, like, some propulsive narrative momentum. It feels like we're on a clock and things are building up to speed, and that makes it a lot easier to kind of just go with and not dwell on the stupidity. Like, some of the things that I've brought up, I probably wouldn't have even necessarily noticed if I wasn't specifically taking notes for a podcast, right? If I was just sitting and watching the movie, some of it I probably would have just kind of let go, and that's a testament to how kind of fun we have in this second half.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, some of the most fun is when she's out, doing more investigation. And I was like, microfiche. I remember doing that in the library myself before there was Google, kids. You had to look at newspapers turned into these little microfilm pieces. I was like, wow, I wonder if Lindsey and Mike have done that too. Well, heck, I know y'all both have. So at one time. So, but I got a kick out of that because we are getting these information dumps. She finds out a lot of stuff. Obviously, they moved to Colorado, and then it seems like every 3 years, Nick needs to chameleon and become someone else, because I guess that's when he blows his cash. And at that point, and he seems to off somebody in the process. I'm like, the gas explosion that kills Annabeth Gish, though, that bothers me. Like, I wanted to know, like, what happened to her and all that. It still bugs me that they got her to do this, and she's in 3 scenes. It's a nothing role. And it bugs me because she could do so much more stuff. But I guess it's all because we're trying to set up the magical Kandinsky that Ashley Judd sees like the corner of in one picture, and that leads her to New Orleans. That is that's a bit of sleuthing right there. That's pretty darn good.
Yeah, I was impressed with her investigative skills. I mean, he talked about that painting from the very first second. Didn't she have that picture out? Libby had the picture out of Maddie, and she was like, come on, kid, tell me something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I thought that was a weird moment, but I was like, all right, she needs to.
These guys,
someone, I guess.
These
but
guys wrote The Rock. They probably knew the guys that Talk to Me Goose. They didn't Top Gun guys. There's a moment, which, by the way, naval aviators just can't stop what they're doing and pick up random pieces of metal and rub them in their hands, lest the plane fall out of the damn sky. But whatever.
But it gave her purpose. It gave her purpose, and I think it caused, it led her to look a little more closely, which led her to that. But then the whole series of finding this painting was fascinating. And the fact that Tommy Lee Jones kept up with her, like, right on her tail, I thought was impressive. And Mike, maybe that's totally normal. I'm going to kind of lean on you for any expertise you might have in that area. But it feels like, literally in the same place at the same time as she is and chasing her around NOLA, I feel like she'd be kind of hard to find.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous. But it's Tommy Lee Jones, so it's fine. Like, okay, cool. like that's the thing. It's Tommy Lee Jones, so it's fine. But no, it's ridiculous. First of all, he's got no jurisdiction there, because he's a Washington State parole officer. So he's got absolutely no jurisdiction to be in either Colorado or New Orleans. He's not a bounty hunter. He doesn't work for a bail bondsman. What you would do even back in 1999 is you send her information to the police in Colorado and the police in New Orleans if you figure out she's there, and you issue a warrant for her and they track her down and she gets picked up. You can't, he's got like, who's man? Well, we get the scenes of his boss yelling at him, right? Yeah. Because he's completely abandoned all his other parolees to go track this lady down. Like he's friggin' like Dog the Bounty Hunter or something. And so it's ridiculous. But again, it's so fun. It's hard to get, and I do really like the scene where she's in the art gallery and he shows up there. And so she's got to quickly find all this stuff and get out of there before he comes back. And the guy says, what does the art gallery owner say? Like, she seemed like such a woman of class, or
so refined.
So refined. Yeah.
She crashes but she tears.
As she's wearing a sweatsuit. She seemed so refined.
She tears the hell out of that rental car, though, with that humongous Chevrolet made out of metal. Yes.
Let me tell you what, those old trucks can take a beating.
Oh yes, I drove one for many years. I know that. So yeah, it's funny, but she gets away. I do love the travelogue in these kind of movies when they actually shoot on location, at least on the coverage side. Like, it's so neat that they bothered to go to Washington. They went to Vancouver to double for Colorado, and then they went to New Orleans and shot. And I've been to New Orleans several times. That's exactly what it looks like, or looked like in the 90s at least. And
the second I saw it, I was like, is that New Orleans? That can't be New Orleans. That's on the other side of the country. Yep. And then a few seconds later, it was New Orleans.
It's also New Orleans pre-Katrina too, so which is a very different look than what it is now.
It is.
But I was actually in New Orleans in '99. So yeah, we do need to talk about Ashley Judd's Libby's driving ability here. She is that friggin' NASA lady, because she clearly has got diapers on, because I have made that cross-country drive several times. Yes. I have driven from Atlanta to Salt Lake City 3 or 4 times, and let me tell you something, that is a brutal drive, and you do not want to do it on your own. We have to assume she's not staying in hotels, because again, that's just going to run the risk. So that's the other thing I always think about when a movie starts going off for me like this. I start thinking about, man, she got to be friggin' rank at this point. Like, she has got to be stanky.
Yo, she's on a plane at one point, but still wearing the same clothes. And I'm going, that lady behind her gives her a look, and I'm like, it's probably because she sniffs her at this point. Like, ugh.
Well, some truck stops have showers, so she could have.
That is true. That is a good point. That is a good point.
And she could
I
have.
thought this through. But the clothes were an issue for me, Mike. I agree with you. The whole time I was like, doesn't she understand she is going into all of these really classy places wearing sweatpants and a sweatshirt? And she looks out of place. She has to know that. She seems really smart, and her mom just gave her a wad of cash. Why isn't she going to buy something a little more presentable in the situation she's trying to fit into? And then cut to the hotel store or wherever it was.
Yeah.
But even before in the hotel store scene was great, but even before that, it's like, Jack Reacher, we all have just watched Jack Reacher. Like, Goodwill exists. Like, we know she can just stop in every town and buy a change of clothes for $5 and look, and look a lot better.
Yeah.
Like,
y'all, no lie. I'm on my way to a job interview once, realized 2/3 of the way there, I've left my suit 3 states back. I stop at a Goodwill, buy a whole suit, interview in it, get the job, and donate the suit back to Goodwill on the way back. I'm like, look, it can be done. Like, even I know this. So yes.
Yep.
The way that they played that hotel store scene was very much like out of that bit in Pretty Woman where Julia Roberts gets to rub it in the snooty woman's face or whatever.
Yes.
But just truncated in a severe way. But what you see is that Libby is now performing incredible fraud because she just stands behind that poor woman at the counter and is like, okay, Mrs. Bottomtooth in 1492. And then she just goes and charges it to her room. I'm sure Mrs. Underhill will figure that out when she gets her Amex bill. Like, that's, you're going to know that pretty quick. And I'm sure is she going to drop that kind of dough on an Armani? Somebody from that store is going to call her and go, we just want to thank you for your patronage. Like, they're going to suck up a little bit. Like, that's going to get noticed. But whatever, because it's all about going to a good party, right? Especially when you can scare the hell out of somebody that thinks you're dead or thinks you're in prison. And this is
once again, not to dwell on the prurient or be the creeper, but it also gives us Ashley Judd in that dress.
Right.
So
true.
We've
all established here that we would all date her. Okay, like we've all said, all 3 of us. So.
Yep.
No, yeah, she looks stunning in that dress, and everybody looks great. And we get Bruce Greenwood to come back on the scene. I feel like he shot for maybe 5 days. And when he's in his suspenders and his Southern genteel thing, I'm sitting there going like, man, that's a hard accent, but I'm lapping it up because I love to watch him just be Mr. Auctioneer salesman sleaze. I'm like, bro, you have elevated from insurance fraud to gas explosion murderer to you own a friggin' hotel in New Orleans, bud. But yeah, wow, good for you, evil person. You're moving up in the world.
I was impressed with the accent too, and his whole character shift as a character, creating a new character. I was really into it. The play within a play, and he did it. Well, I mean, you know what I mean, style. We're not talking about a play here, but I was watching for the accent, which, I've done a few times before, not New Orleans ones, but it was really good. It was really spot on, I thought. Just the real pinky up Southern.
But no, it's not bad. It's pretty good. And what I like, too, that he can switch it on and off. Like, that's pretty darn good. Yeah. That's when you know, like, how evil this guy really is. It's like, holy cow. How do you keep the brain power up to do that? That's tough. But it shows you got an actor in there that really is just like, okay, I know what this is, and he's just going to chew it up and does great with it. And his scenes with Tommy Lee Jones are fun. I love those moments when they're kind of going back and forth at each other. Do you have any idea what this woman, she's trying to kill you? I don't know why she would have ever got that idea in Taw Nation, doing the Foghorn Leghorn. And I love that. It was funny because Tommy Lee Jones is from Texas, so that's just how he sounds, so he's not faking the funk. Whereas Bruce Greenwood is most definitely laying it on thick. But I got a kick out of those.
You strike me as a whiskey and soda.
Yeah, he's sizing people up and all that. But I love how she agrees to meet him. We get the big historic cemetery because if you're going to do New Orleans, man, you got to hit some of the landmarks, right? So let's do that. why in the world Libby goes there? She's got the gun on her. We know this, right? Why, when he knocks her out, he doesn't think like, maybe I should make sure she doesn't have any weapons so she can get out of this coffin and come and kill me again. I mean, she did just come from prison completely across the country in the same sweatpants to murder me. So maybe I should frisk her. I don't know.
Did he know? I guess he did. Did Tommy Lee Jones tell him that she had his gun?
Yeah, I think at that point he had said something about like she might shoot you with the gun she stole from. Or he told the cop that. Yeah,
he told the cop that because the cop didn't want to help him, and he said, "Oh well, she's going to kill one of your prominent citizens with the gun that she stole from me."
Good point.
So
yeah. So the cops know. So
I also question her willingness to chase a strange child through a cemetery, but. I mean, you'd think clearly he was about the same age as her son and she hadn't seen him for a few years, but I don't know. I feel like she would have recognized that it wasn't him, even from that distance. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not a parent, so I don't know.
I'm not either. I have no idea.
Me either. I'm way out of my skis to talk about that. I don't know. I did like that he ran away because at first I was like, oh, okay, that's actually like a believable thing. Like he may be like freaked out by all of this just a little bit, but the kid's just paid off, so whatever. He's just running away from that.
I like that he did the whole thing with like a Mountain Dew in his hand or something.
Oh yeah, that was a product placement. Yeah, my wife caught that. The licensing person like, they pay for that. I was like, oh yeah, prominent. So make sure that was on the screen in the right place. But I mean that's how these things get done. I did get a kick out of that though, that she's just running after him and then she gets bonked over the head. But when she wakes up with that coffin, we're in another horror movie again too, because it's like, oh, Mrs. Bates, excuse me while I shoot the hinges off of this coffin here and get out of this sarcophagus.
Yep. She flicked that light. Well, because they don't show the dead body right away.
Mm-mm.
They just show her in the coffin. And I looked at Brian and I went, is she in there with a dead body? Is she in there with a dead body? And then they showed the dead body. And I was like, yeah. All right. Nailed that one. Got the other stuff wrong, but I got that part right.
But again, another one of those weird things about this movie where it like never kind of commits to anything, because she wakes up in the coffin and she like has 2 seconds of deep breathing and then pulls out the gun, shoots out the hinges, and she's out. We don't really ever feel that much danger for her because she's never in danger long enough for us to feel anything, because she's always just getting out of everything very quickly. It's an effective scene. It works, but it is one of those things where one of the times I wish the movie had been a little less breakneck and let us sit with her kind of freaking out being in there for a minute before she's like, oh, right, I have a gun. Although I guess the catch-22 then is, dummy, you have a gun. Why don't you just shoot out? But, yeah.
Well, the nit that I will pick on it is if he got her in the coffin, he had to break the coffin open to make that happen, which once you break it open, it doesn't lock back. So therefore, just push up.
Really?
And it's over. Yeah. I mean, if he got that thing open, and then to do that, he had to pry that lock open and break it. So if she just pushes up, the door is going to fly open in front of her. Like she didn't need to do that at all. But
Plus, on top of that, you're already going to put her in a coffin. Just fucking kill her first and then put her in the coffin. That's
I thought that too. Yeah.
You know what? Bruce Greenwood needed a Scott Evil to go like, you need to shoot him. You shoot her twice and then make sure she's in the coffin. Yeah, but again, the logic of this movie operates because everyone in it makes the absolute dumbest choice they can to make sure that Libby gets where she's got to go. Like that's the entire through line of all of this. But I do love how though that we get the morning she's running and Layman catches her, and I kind of like the fact that we let the fugitive catcher actually catch up to her. She starts crying. He has this tender moment because we haven't talked about it, but along the way, he's picked up on the breadcrumbs enough to where he believes her story. Now, I also am having a hard time suspending belief that he would go like, yeah, but she also tried to kill me and like a bunch of other people, so I'm not going to let that go. But I feel for her, so I hear you, but we're going to talk about these other problems along the way. But I don't know, it's a strange thing because you don't know how it's going to play out in the end when he goes back to confront Nick in the morning at his hotel, and he starts landing on things like, no, I want $2 million right now. Gives him right this second, and he's shaking him down. And you realize like, oh man, he's just trying to get him to do the James Bond thing where you tell me all your evil plan and then I can play it back for you as I arrest you for it. So it's a little cheesy. And like I said, in the plot summary, to no one's surprise, she comes out right as she hears the right moment. I want to ask y'all, like, though, honestly, I kind of would have dug it if we didn't have to have a fight scene where she murders him at the end. Like, wouldn't it have been more satisfying? They're like, no, I'm not going to kill you. I'm actually going to let the real police take you to real prison for all the shit that you did. Or did we need him to die in a horrific manner?
For me, the more visceral experience was her shooting the painting. So everything after that was just
the Kaminsky had to go.
Bonus. Yeah.
So you know how I said when we were talking about the Double Jeopardy thing that they were going to do something that was going to piss me off at the end and we'd come back to it. This is it.
Yeah.
Okay. This ending just infuriates me because if you're going to so badly fuck up Double Jeopardy, don't walk it back at the end. I am so mad that she kills him in self-defense. I mean, this is Jay, you said she murders him. No, she doesn't. This is a clean kill. This is a clean self-defense kill in this situation. Like, if you're going to fuck it up so badly that you base your entire premise around this thing, then have her actually murder him and have Tommy Lee Jones be like, well, yep, it's Double Jeopardy. You're going to be just fine. Or do like what you said, Jay, and have her not actually kill him. Like, this is the most spineless possible ending they could have gone with, which is they've got the guy dead to rights, and then Bruce Greenwood, he's a millionaire who owns a hotel. Instead of hiring an army of lawyers, he just goes, rage monster and tries to shoot a cop and then tries to kill her. And so she's free and clear to shoot him. We don't even have to talk about Double Jeopardy. It's self-defense. She's justified. It's Raylan Givens is going, yeah, no, that's a good kill. You're justified, and so like it drives me nuts that they set up this stupid premise for this movie and they don't even have the balls to follow through with it at the end. Like,
but they doubled down on it. They doubled down on it with her talking. Like, she lays out all that jailhouse lawyer crap, and Tommy Lee Jones says, "Yeah, sure."
As a law professor, she's right. I know. I was howling at that scene.
All I could think was somewhere in Utah, Mike is going, I can assure you, she's dead wrong.
This. I had a decent amount of fun here in this last half, and then in the last 5 minutes, the movie totally lost me again because it was just so everything about it was just like wrong choice after wrong choice. I feel like, so yeah, they anyway, moving on.
Yeah, but we got to put the button on it because Tommy Lee Jones is, I guess they've given him some, I don't know, Demerol or something because he's talking out of his head. Like, I'll get you a little pink pony and I'll get you a pardon and all that. He's talking out of his head as they're wheeling him on the gurney. And then he accompanies her to go pick up the kid in Georgia. But this time she gets to drive, he gets to ride. And there's something about the way he delivers that last line. And it's almost like, oh, please get out of the car and stop this movie. He's so done with this. And I'm like, oh, I feel you, Tommy. I feel you. I'm there. But did you notice the kid, though? The grown-up Maddie? He's the kid from Arlington Road, Mike.
Yeah, and Unbreakable, and he's just as creepy in this as he is in those.
Right?
Two. Like when he shows up, I feel so bad for Spencer Treat Clark. It's not fun to, I should be higher brow than make fun of him. And as an adult, he's grown into a perfectly, decent looking dude. Like if you saw Glass, but as a kid, man, he just had this look, and all I could think when Libby's looking at all the kids, and he turns around, and she's like, Maddie, and he turns around, I would have been like, oh, never mind. Sorry, I'm not your mom. Bye. Have a nice life.
I also don't know how the little moppet-headed kid grew up to be him in like 6 years. I'm like, you change a lot, but you don't change that. You don't change completely. So like that. So, which would, I guess Double Jeopardy 2 would have been that it wasn't Maddie. It was Angela's other son or something like that. But we'll never know because this movie made money, but it didn't get that kind of treatment. So
and Libby got her full pardon and then went back to prison for all the other crimes that she committed while trying to clear her name.
Talk about the charge.
One hand, good news. Full pardon. You did not kill your husband. Well, you did, but you're justified. So full pardon. Now, here you're under arrest and going to prison for attempted murder on 3 separate police officers, massive property damage, attempted vehicular manslaughter, fraud.
Multiple fraud, identity.
Yeah.
But on the plus side, we are giving you your job back as a stylist. So.
Everything ends with
silver lining.
There we go. Well, I think we've reached the lining of this podcast where it's time to get final thoughts, recommendations, and popcorn ratings. So what are yours for Double Jeopardy, Mike?
It's a small popcorn for me. I mean, this is not a good movie. This is not, other than a few things, this is not a movie I enjoy. And no matter how much sort of sleazy potboiler fun there is to be found, the entire Double Jeopardy thing just casts such a cloud over it for me. But then I also thought, you know what? It actually could be a medium popcorn, but only if you go to the dollar store and you buy those bags of dollar store popcorn, because this is such a dollar store ass movie that dollar store popcorn gets you up to a medium.
Oh.
Well said. Lindsay?
Man, I didn't even know that was an option. Now I'm thinking, all right, Jay, tell me if this works for our popcorn rating, because technically it's popcorn. I'm going to give it a Costco pack, but like a big pack of multiple packs. So just one of the little packs in the big pack of Cracker Jacks.
Yeah, we can do that.
Because it's like satisfying on a certain level. For me, it was very satisfying because it moves so quickly. And again, I've been kind of stuck in the realm of overly long movies that felt like they were about at least 30 minutes too long for the film. So to have something so efficiently run was incredibly refreshing for me. So I would give it a small Cracker Jack, or in our traditional popcorn ratings, just a regular medium popcorn.
I gotta say, I had vivid memories of seeing this movie, because I saw it in theaters. I saw it at least once since then, but it had been a long, long time, and I didn't remember a lot of it. And when I watched it again and prepared for this, I thought, wow, I'm really going to owe Mike like a bottle of something, or, probably need to buy Lindsey some flowers, because I feel bad, because y'all, I did not have a good time rewatching it. I had such tremendous time talking about it with the two of you that it actually improves my thought about this movie, that I think this is the kind of movie that should be watched with a group of people, preferably if you've got one friend who's a lawyer that you can drag through it, that you ply with enough drinks to make sure that, hey, yes, we get some real, like, we're going to pause it. And like Jamie Kennedy does in the middle of the screen, like, hold on, let me explain to you all how awful all this is, because that's exactly the fun that can be had in this movie. This movie is on warp speed to Stupidville from the very minute it starts, and it never gets off that train. It doesn't mean that it's totally unwatchable, but if you apply any amount of brain power to it at all, it's like Jaws the Revenge. It will slap you for thinking about it too much. And it's not even as satisfying as that. This is definitely small popcorn territory, but it's the kind of small popcorn that I buy it at like the JV wrestling tournament. I don't expect a lot. I'm like, whatever. And for the first like little bit of it, I'm like, yeah, it is what it is. But in the middle, there's like this buttery, salty wonderfulness that I'm like, yes, this is the greatest popcorn I've ever had. And then I get to the end, I'm like, oh no, it's terrible again. But it was still popcorn, and there wasn't a lot of it, and it didn't cost me a lot of my calories. So I only have to run so many miles to forget it. So it's a small popcorn, but it's at least a fun one to do. And it's always fun talking about it with folks like y'all. So Mike, thank you once again, not only for coming on the show, because you're always so gracious to do that, but for taking one for the team and for being our expert here to pick apart this thing. It's always great to have you here, my friend. And please, once again, tell folks how they can follow you and all the great stuff that you're doing out in the podland.
Yeah, you can follow me personally on Twitter and Letterboxd at Hibachi Justice. You can follow the show Action for Everyone on Twitter at A4E Podcast. That's the letter A, the number 4, the letter E Podcast. And you can find that podcast anywhere that podcasts are found. We typically post every Sunday, so make sure to check us out. It's a good fun time. Even if you're not a huge action movie fan, I still recommend checking it out because we have a lot of fun, and it's a much, like I said, it's a light, flowy. We try and just be like sort of bros at a bar talking about movies. We're not really trying to do major structure or anything like that. So check it out. We think it's a good time, at least.
It is a good time. And if you're not into action movies, but you want to crash course in one, you can do a lot worse. I promise you that. So I would definitely get in there just because not only your knowledge, Mike, but again, your two co-hosts bring so much to it and you each have very unique perspectives. So it's a good show and a lot of fun. And if you just want to know, like, what should I be watching? That's a great one to listen to. I love shows like that. So thanks again for coming on Filmstrip. Folks, as always, you can follow the show's social media at FilmstripPod on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. There you'll find announcements about upcoming shows. A link to our Letter to Box page that has our entire list of reviews, 300 plus reviews in our archives. There's something for everyone there. Go to filmstrippodcast.com and you'll link to our Anchor distribution site where you can find us on the platform of your choice. Apple, Spotify, Google, all those places. Those places, it lets you rate us. Please give us a 5-star rating. It helps other people find the show. We appreciate the support, and share the show on your socials as well because it helps spread the word. Thank you once again for being a part of this ride. And Mike and Lindsey, thanks for joining me. Once again, we'll see you next time on Filmstrip.
Thank you for listening to Filmstrip. You can find more episodes on our website, filmstrippodcast.com. The Filmstrip theme music is produced and performed by Frozen Lake 121. All content used or discussed in these podcast episodes is the property of the respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504, C2, Title 17.